Thank you for joining. Okay, let's get into the first one. The first question is, we have a listing set up as a parent with children, color variation. However, even though we have 4 colors, it's only showing up as 1 in Amazon search results with customers, regardless of whether you advertise individual children or whatever. The issue is that if only 1 color shows up and a customer doesn't like that color option, the customer might not click the listing to see if we have the color options. So we made a picture to show all 4 color options that we have, which you previously said was okay. My question is, can we use the image that shows the color variation as image number 1 for all of the children to show in the search results? So typically what happens is whichever picture is referring to the most popular listing, the most popular one that Amazon thinks will convert, that's the one that shows. So it's not as though there's some sort of special thing where they're trying to make it more difficult. It's just that sometimes if, say, the red or the black one is the one that converts, the red or the black one is the one that shows in the search results. So it's not anything more complicated than that. Typically, though, if you're advertising specifically for like an orange one or a green one, usually that one will show in the sponsored ad spot. But if it's below that in the organic search results, then it'll still show with the most popular color, not the one that's being advertised. So it's kind of an interesting thing where Amazon will show the color they think will convert best, rather than the one that the person actually searched for. So if you want them to see it, then you do need to put it as number 1 with all 4 pictures. Now, the problem is, technically speaking, Amazon doesn't want you to do that unless it's a 4-pack with all 4 items. So that is a tricky way to do it. But if you do it that way, you need to be really, really darn clear in the title that it's only 1 item that you're getting rather than all 4 as a set, because that's your problem on the other end. Is that just because people don't realize that it comes in different colors, so they didn't click, they may believe they're getting a 4-pack for really cheap for whatever it is. So that's the part where I would be super careful is, test it out, see what happens, but realize that first, Amazon doesn't really like it when you put it there because it can confuse people into thinking that they're getting some sort of set. So that's the reason why they're concerned about putting everything on the main page. Not necessarily that it's wrong. I mean, you're not saying it's 100% guaranteed to be the best thing ever. That would be a problem. But if customers are confused by what they're getting, if they think that they're going to get one thing and they get another, that's what Amazon's trying to prevent. So be careful that if you tried to solve one problem by putting all 4 colors on, that you don't cause another problem by getting customers to think they're getting a screaming deal on a 4-pack, which some people really believe. So be careful of that. Okay. So we have a couple more questions. Let's see. Good morning, Kathy. Good morning, Lee. Let's see. I'll go to Lee's question since that got popped into the chat for everyone. So I need a reality check about what rights and tools my clients have as a branded seller. Because there's other sellers attaching their listings and taking control of the buy box, right? My sellers are brand registered and in the food category. They have selling channels outside of Amazon with all the major food distributors. They do not control who the distributors sell to. Technically, as far as Amazon is concerned, this is not a fraudulent seller who's attaching the listing. It is a gating issue. I get that. But what can I do to help these sellers remove, discourage, or hopefully remove these unwanted sellers? Yeah, that's a ridiculously hard question because pretty much almost nothing, to be honest. And there's a couple of different approaches that you can take to functionally gate the product as opposed to practically gate it. So the way that a lot of people who are in the spa business do this is they have products that are just for professional use. So they have things that are labeled clearly as not being for retail use, right? You can't really do that in food though, because it's either labeled correctly or it's not. I mean, you have like sample packs, but that's generally speaking not going to be something that someone finds, through a distributor or whatever. That's not going to work. So there's 2 approaches you can take. The first is to really push and really own listings that only are sold online. So by that, I mean, if you always have 1-pack, 2-pack, or 4-pack in the store, then you sell a 3-pack on Amazon. Or you have a different size that you sell on Amazon. Like you have a 12-ounce that you sell to distributors, and then you only sell a 15-ounce on Amazon. So that's one way to do it, to where you have Amazon exclusive items that you then feature in your storefront, that you then run advertising to, that you push, And then anyone who sells something that isn't an Amazon featured product, that isn't, in the right packaging for e-commerce or whatever, then you can file a trademark infringement for things that aren't correct. So usually what I recommend to clients is that they have completely different packaging for their Amazon lines and their off Amazon lines, and that the listing clearly shows the packaging for the Amazon line. Like it's got, thick corrugate or something else that shows that it's clearly for Amazon. And then if someone lists something that's not that, because of course they'd have to go find your packaging and replicate it, then you can submit reports to Amazon and try to take them down that way. It's not as effective as brand gating, right? Brand gating is the best, but it is more effective than what currently folks are doing, which is just selling the same thing on Amazon and off Amazon, and then people just list whatever they want. And as long as the bin check comes out to match, then what can you do? Absolutely nothing. So it really does mean treating Amazon like it needs to be its own special thing. And I know that's a really hard sell for some people, and it's really hard for them to wrap their brains around how that could be successful for them. But if you own the buy box, if you own the listing, you can run ads to things, you can change the content, you can send your social content to it. Like there's so many things you can do to build up a listing when you own the buy box that you can't do when other people own the buy box, even if you're selling stuff. So even if it's a really successful listing, sometimes I still don't like having anyone else on it for our clients because we can't control anything about it. You can't boost a rank using advertising keywords if you never win the buy box. So we're actually working on this with a couple of clients right now. We're trying to both manage distribution, but also try to manage what gets sold on Amazon. That way they can't make you lose the buy box for things that you're selling elsewhere. You will always win the buy box on certain bundles and certain sizes because no one else has that. And if they do try to list it, then you can kick them off because it can't possibly be correct. Like they can't do it. And I remember there was a client that we had one time, and we had a lot of reinstatement clients back in the day, and we are more selective now about who we bring on just because volume just is crazy in that space. But we had someone come to us and he was like, "This is absolutely legitimate product. I buy them in tester sizes and then I squeeze them into the bottles." And I was like, not legitimate. So if you have something where you only offer the smaller size and then they basically move it into a bigger size so they can list on that listing, then you've got a case. But you've got to do something to where the product is different on Amazon than it is elsewhere. Otherwise, there's no controls there. Amazon's not going to help you, unfortunately. There is one exception to that for ASIN gating, and you can get ASIN gating if there's some sort of other issue that comes up. So for example, if there's some sort of safety issue that comes up, then you can request ASIN gating, like if they're storing it incorrectly and it could cause problems for the consumer. So like we've been able to do that in supplements where we said if they store it incorrectly or at the wrong temperature, then it could cause a problem for the customer. So then you can make cases like that, usually at the ASIN level. There is a program called Transparency. To my knowledge, it only helps you if they're using FBA. My understanding is that it doesn't help you if they're using merchant fulfilled listings. But usually merchant fulfilled listings don't win the buy box, so that could help too. So you can request information on Transparency from brand registry support and see what the process would be. My understanding is that it just requires an extra label. The label printer apparently is expensive, but it could help with some of the FBA shipments. From what I'm understanding, though, it does not help with merchant fulfilled, but double check on that. Okay, next question. Oh yes, we had a follow-up question about bin checks, and I wanted to go into the concept of Amazon screwing up an intake and how that process works. Got it. So bin checks are basically when you file a ticket to Amazon to say, can you go please check my product in the fulfillment centers and let me know what's in it? And so then the seller support associate will file a ticket to the individual FCs, usually just one, maybe two, and they'll come back to you with a picture and they'll say, here's what we found in the bin. And then you can say, okay, that is my product or that isn't my product. I always recommend this when you have a customer complain about receiving the wrong item. That just should be a standard practice. When you get switcheroos or you get someone who says, this isn't what I ordered, this is a 2-pack and I ordered a 4-pack, whatever the case may be, always file a bin check because you want the proof from Amazon that what you have in there is correct. Otherwise, they'll turn off your listing. So always file a bin check. This should be just a standard, like, part of your operating procedure when you get complaints from customers. So when that bin check is filed and they go look at it and they send you back the pictures, sometimes the picture that comes back shows that somebody screwed up. We had this happen with a client where he had submitted, I think it was like 2,000 units, and Amazon re-stickered them to where half of units 2, the second product, had the labels from the first one. So everything from the first one got received correctly. Everything from the second one, half of it was received correctly, half of it was received incorrectly. So what we actually had to do was remove everything from unit 1, which then removed all the incorrect ones that were marked incorrectly of unit 2 that were marked as unit 1, sort through them, and then resend them back to Amazon. Is this ideal? No. It was extremely irritating, but Amazon will not do this themselves. And even if they tell you they do, they don't actually. So seller support will try to make it happen. The FCs are just not set up to do this kind of fix. They just aren't good at it. A full removal and then resubmit is the best way to do it. But you want the bin check so that you can take a case to Amazon and file for reimbursement and say, hey, you guys screwed up on this. I'm going to remove it and send it back in, but I need a reimbursement for my shipping charges because you just completely ruined my shipment. So you can come to that and try to get your money back in that way because it was their fault. But you're not going to get them to fix it. Even if they say they fix it, what I've found is that most of the time the FC associates are still doing things wrong. So it's just not worth it to have Amazon fix it. It's actually cheaper and easier to remove everything, resticker, send back in, than it is to fight with Amazon over it. Just being completely honest, you lose 2 or 3 weeks, you lose rank, it's awful, but it's much better than having Amazon worry about it. The other thing is that if you have a product that you know you need to remove, the simplest thing to do there is to immediately ship in a new shipment under a new SKU. So you just create a new SKU in Amazon under the same ASIN. So you add a product, add the ASIN, and then sell yours, put a new seller SKU in, ship a new amount in to FBA so that the new amount will get in within the week while you're removing everything from the old SKU. That way your listing isn't down for too long, everything's moving, and then you clear everything out with the old SKU. So by using that different SKU, you can actually control your lots at Amazon. So the only way that you can control your lots at Amazon is by having different SKUs. So that's another way to correct the problem faster, so that Amazon can remove everything from that initial shipment that you had, while you can then send more stuff in so that you don't lose too much time and too much rank by having it be out of stock. Okay, next question. Let's see. Does Amazon send emails to customers asking for seller feedback and product reviews after each order is complete? If they do, am I still allowed to? Should I just let Amazon's email do the work? What's your recommendation? No, they don't. They say they do. They will send out an email saying that it shipped properly, and there's like a link in there where you can leave seller feedback. That is something that is there, I believe, but I don't know how. I'm pretty sure they have different formats for that. What they don't do is they don't request product reviews unless you pay for the early reviewer program. If you pay for the early reviewer program, then they send out a direct request, and it literally says, Amazon.com requests that you review this product. Like, it's a really obvious review request, and then you do have to pay for that, right? And that one is $60 for 5 reviews, which is a decent price. That's fine. So that's the reason people still send out the requests through all the different feedback tools, because it really isn't something that Amazon focuses on. They'll send the delivery confirmation. There's some links in it, but it's nothing where there's like a real call to action or a real push to get people to leave reviews and feedback. Now, that being said, Amazon's stated policies around emails are really narrow. They don't want you to do any sort of marketing. They don't want you to do any sort of diverting. That means driving someone off of Amazon. They don't want you to talk about anything really, which is kind of funny because people do all the time. And they're actually, my opinion is that they allow this to happen because, first, it doesn't cause any problems in the marketplace, right? What they really want to enforce on is anything that causes a problem in the marketplace, that causes lack of customer trust. And so that's where, cheating on reviews causes lack of customer trust. So that's not allowed. Diverting off of Amazon causes a lack of customer trust because then people think they can do better off of Amazon. They want everyone to feel happy and excited on Amazon, right? So if you are sending a marketing message to customers, you want to make sure that you're using only Amazon URLs, and you want to make sure that whatever you're asking for, you're not including some sort of really obvious incentive. Like, hey, if you leave a review, we'll send you free stuff, or here's a coupon code for 50% off. Oh, and leave a review. Like, don't put those things together because it's an obvious incentive. But I would still request reviews. I would still request feedback depending on what you need more of. And definitely include links to your storefront or your detail page with coupons. Just don't put them together with the review or make it really, really obvious that you're trying to like convince them that they should leave a positive review. But we have never had any problems with including storefront links or including product links and discount codes with, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of products. Never had an issue. Never had any seller suspended for this. We've had sellers suspended for image issues, so be careful on that with putting any sort of language around guarantees or 100% guaranteed or made in the USA, things that can get you in trouble from a FTC perspective. But as far as sending out a message to Amazon customers and including your storefront and saying, hey, look, you can buy this, Amazon's all about selling more stuff. Okay, I've noticed when shipping a merchant fulfilled order that I don't always have the option for a padded flat rate envelope like I did in the past. Has anyone else experienced in the past 6 months? I don't like paying more for postage than I need to. Oh, interesting. So a lot of this is automated, right? So depending on the back end of your catalog, so whatever settings you have on the back end of your catalog, Amazon has their own defaults where they say, okay, if this, then this, then this, then this. So depending on what your settings were, and it could be that your settings changed, like say if you've got an FBA item, they will often be re-measuring that on a regular basis and changing the back end for you. Very convenient of them, right? So double check those things. You might have had, like in this situation, you might have actually had the item remeasured and something changed on the back end of the catalog. So be careful that if you had something come in like you know, something with a long bit of like a poly bag or something like that, it could have been remeasured longer, and then now you're sized out of the padded envelope category. So go back in the back end of your catalog and check what the sizing is so that you can see if something changed there, because it may not have been something that Amazon changed, right? It could have been like in their policies, they could have changed it, but more than likely something probably changed on your catalog item. So check that first. If that isn't the case, then it may be that they've changed their policies. So I would suggest checking that out. Okay. We have more questions in here. I did not see that. For some reason, it was stuck down at the bottom. Yeah, so Lee, yeah, something completely unique for Amazon is going to be really important because, you know, we've done this to where we have 2-pack. So we're the only ones who have the 2-pack with the 2-pack outer case. So the outer case clearly says 2-pack with the brand name, to where someone else selling it like in a poly bag would be not complying with the detail page. But you've got to do stuff like that to where it's clearly different. Otherwise, you don't have any leg to stand on that someone, you know, in the test buy process, that someone sold something that wasn't permitted. Let's see. Christina said, when is a bin check recommended, like as a proactive thing quarterly, even if you haven't had issues? No, and don't worry about it if you haven't had issues. You really want to make sure that you're doing it when you have some sort of issue, like you have a switcheroo on a product. So something went out that wasn't supposed to. Now, you know, a switcheroo when it was clearly not your product. Like, you know, we had a situation happen multiple times with a seller who was selling shoes, and they had like a bra go out. They don't sell them, right? That's not ever going to be a thing. Don't worry about it. That was an Amazon problem. Someone just picked the wrong item or put it in the wrong box. So don't worry about that. But for the situation where you have some sort of complaint or a customer said something, then that's what you need to do. Would different SKU mess up the subscribe and save customers? You know, I actually just had this question last week, and I need to double check because I thought that they were uploaded by ASIN, but I will double check on that. And if they're not, then I think that we need to contact Amazon about that and complain. But one thing that you can do is you can use, you can actually do something where you delete your old SKU. Like if you do the removal, you can delete your old SKU and then create a new one with the same SKU, and it'll give you a new FN SKU. So it'll strand your old inventory by deleting it, which is fine because it was bad anyway. So who cares if it's stranded? But you can create a new one. Now, the thing that you would need to do is immediately submit it to a removal order so that it would all be grabbed, and then create a new FN SKU so that you can ship it in under a different FN SKU. That's a little bit trickier. I will look into that and update you in the group because the subscribe and save I know is a concern. If you set up a new SKU, don't you lose all your rank and keyword history? No, keyword history and rank is attached to your ASIN, not your SKU. So the SKU is just your number that's attached to that ASIN. So there's 3 different levels, right? The top level is ASIN. That's your actual catalog ID. Then you have the person who's selling it, and that is your FN SKU. That's 1 level below ASIN. And then you have your actual units of inventory, which is the FC SKU, which is 1 level below that, which is the SKU at the individual fulfillment center. Now, sellers never see their FC SKU, but they actually exist where you can round up just the items from a specific fulfillment center if you're in Amazon. If you're outside of Amazon, then you're screwed. You got to remove everything by FN SKU. But the same seller can have different FN SKUs based on the number of SKUs they've got. Let's see. Kara asks, we have a shipment that started receiving 7 days ago. It shows the correct ASIN in the shipping queue, but in the managed inventory, there is no record of the shipment. Called, they said that, yep, they always wait 21 days. Yep. Every other shipment is shown an FC transfer inbound during receiving. Is there another action we should take? Unfortunately, no. This is why I always say that you need to have at least 2 to 3 months cover at Amazon, which I know is annoying if something goes wrong because then you're removing a crap ton of inventory, but they don't do a dang thing for 21 days. And we've seen this happen before where if anything is off with your shipment, either maybe the bill of lading wasn't entirely clear or one of the stickers came off or something happened and they sideline it, then they'll wait until they have some downtime to work on it. And so sometimes things can be held up for quite a while, but we've never gotten them to look at it sooner than 3 weeks, ever. And every single time there's been a problem, we've just had to remove everything and fix it. It's been annoying, but that's how Amazon works. They're such a well-oiled machine that when something goes wrong, they just can't seem to fix it. All of the FC workers have what are called standard work papers. And so the standard work is basically the SOP has to fit on 1 page or it doesn't count. I think things are more complicated than 1 page of an SOP, but in any case, anything that goes off books or off process are handled by what are called problem solvers. And there's a limited number of problem solvers. So they get to it when they get to it. And if they take a while to get to it, they take a while to get to it. There's no way around that. So depending on which fulfillment center you sent it to, you might be stuck because there was a fire in one in Memphis, I believe. And then a bunch of the ones in the Chicago area were actually closed. So depending on where it went, that might be part of the problem too. When an item comes back customer damaged and Amazon resells at a lower price than the listing, do I get any payment for this? If Amazon reimbursed you, then you already got paid. So generally speaking, that's what I would check for, is that you got a reimbursement for that. So as long as Amazon reimbursed you, then they own the item now, and they can do whatever they want with it. Kathy said subscribe and save is uploaded by SKU. Okay, then I think that it might make sense. I think I will complain to one of my old friends at Amazon about that because it makes it more difficult to handle errors like this. It makes more sense to handle it by ASIN anyway. They may be doing it by SKU to try to match it to the seller, but their system should be able to handle it. In any case, the solution for that would be to delete the entire SKU. It would be then stranded, then remove everything so it's attached to removal order, create the same SKU name again under add a variation. That'll give it a new FN SKU and then ship in the new stuff. A little bit more complicated, but the same basic concept. Okay, next question. I am trying to get my seller account approved, but my utility bills are my roommate's name. I sent my renter's insurance with my name on it, but it still isn't approved. Any suggestions? Get a utility bill in your own name. I'm not joking. Basically, Amazon's teams, and I just mentioned the whole standard work procedure has to fit on 1 page and everything needs to be followed exactly and they can't deviate. That's how it works for nearly everybody. So if you have something that is required to have an element on it, you're not going to get an exception just for you. So if you need to get a utility bill in your name, then get one in your name. change the internet to your name, or provide a cell phone, or get a landline, just because landlines start at $13 a month, as far as I recall. They can be pretty cheap. So set up a landline, and now you've got a utility bill in your name. And then you can turn it off, because who uses a landline if they have a cell phone? But if Amazon says you need a utility bill in your name, then get a utility bill in your name, because they're not going to budge on that. It took me 4 submissions to get approved for a gated category. And I basically just had to keep going back to my client and saying, you need to argue with your factory, get these updated. And they're like, but they're not wanting to do it. Okay, then I can't get you approved. Either you need to get the factory to change it, or you need to get the raw data so that I can change it. But either way, if you don't have a website on the invoice, it doesn't matter how authentic that invoice is, because they need to validate that this particular invoice matches this particular company, matches this particular product. And if they can't do that, for whatever reason, they're not going to approve it, So same thing with the utility bill. If it doesn't match to you, then you're kind of SOL. The FBA team wants me to list my US stock on Amazon.mx and Amazon.ca. They're saying I will not have to collect tax through NARF, and Amazon provides a separate line item for customs duties and tax, handles all cross-border implications. Does it mean it'll be pain-free in terms of taxes? Maybe. I actually don't think that the problem with selling on Canada and Mexico in this way is taxes. That's not the first thing that comes to mind as problematic. It's actually the shipping that comes to mind as problematic. And double check, anyone who has a .com listing, go check on .ca and .mx and make sure you don't have listings that just randomly showed up. This happened to multiple clients. One client actually got a shipment to Mexico, and she was like, the heck, I never listed anything in Mexico. Amazon auto listed her stuff in Mexico. And so she was like, I can't even ship there. The cost to ship is more than the product is worth. I'm not going to do it. So double check that you don't have listings already on MX and CA, because you might. But as far as Amazon saying that things are simple to try to get you to do cross-border, I am always suspicious, because I used to work with those teams doing compliance, and they will skirt by any legal requirements they can to meet their numbers goals, and their numbers goals are high. So I would be cautious about that and ask an attorney. I would not trust Amazon. The people who are telling you that are people who are evaluated based on how many sellers they sign up and how many listings they get cross-listed. So I wouldn't trust them. I would definitely double check with an attorney. I think that the team that's most helpful in terms of taxes and handling cross-border stuff, or just any sort of tax implications in general, is the Online Merchants Guild with Paul Raffleson. So let me put that in here. Online Merchants Guild, Paul Raffleson. Paul is actually, he's the husband of an old colleague of mine from Amazon, and I didn't know that he was in this space until recently. It's like, oh, that's cool. Okay, next question. I received negative product reviews due to hijackers' garbage products on my listing. Yep. I got the hijackers removed, but the negative reviews customers left are still on the listing. I contacted Amazon dozens of times, but they don't seem to care. I tried to explain the reviews are for the wrong product, but Amazon has stopped responding. Do you have any advice on how I can get the reviews removed? No. Here's the reason why. Amazon has a policy that they do not remove reviews unless they are in some way fraudulent, like actually fraudulent, like someone paid someone for the review, or it was in some way a competitor trying to discount you. So that's what they mean by fraudulent. Or it is in some way super abusive or offensive. So, someone making jokes about, say, pedophilia, that will get it taken down. Really, really offensive language, so a lot of swear words in it, that'll get it taken down. That's it. Those are the only reasons why they'll take down a review. I don't know if you guys remember, this was one of my favorite examples, because it had nothing to do with the product, and now the product had completely crazy reviews because of it. But back in the 2012 debates between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, Mitt Romney said something about how he was trying to diversify his team in Massachusetts. And he said that he did it by asking for binders full of women. And that phrase is just hilarious in general. That was just like, as soon as I heard it, because I watched the debates live, I just burst out laughing and was like, oh Lord, that's not a fun thing to say. You shouldn't have said that. And of course, everyone went crazy about it. And, it was just not a great turn of phrase. But what happened is on Amazon, on the Avery binder page, the ones that are like 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, the ones that are in like every store everywhere, suddenly there were just dozens and dozens and dozens of reviews. And, there'd be like a 5-star review that said, "This Avery binder is amazing. I stuffed all the women in my life into it and they stayed put exactly where they belong." Or there would be like a 1-star review where someone said, "I tried to put all the women in here and they wouldn't stay stuck and they kept getting out. What a terrible binder." Had nothing to do with the binder. And Amazon still hasn't removed them. So if you find, like, sometimes the companies in these cases, when something like that happened and it went viral and people were posting tons of comments on their listings, they actually ended up having to create whole new listings and start over from scratch because Amazon will not remove the reviews. They just won't do it. So even when it's nothing to do with the product, just a joke, they won't remove it. And they especially won't remove it if the customer bought on that ASIN, that's what they received, and they reviewed it. They especially won't remove it then, even though it was not your fault, it was not your product. So the thing that I've seen work fairly well in this situation is responding to the negative customer review and treating it like a PR opportunity. So you're never going to reach that customer, right? Because it goes into like a spam folder when you get those notifications that someone responded. So it's not exactly going to be something where you can fix for that customer what happened. So what you want to do is you want to post a response that's clear that you've addressed the issue, and that there's a company called Johnny Victorio, I think is the name of it, but it's an apple peeler. And my former mother-in-law has like 3 apple trees on her property, and so during the fall, I always go by and whenever I drop off my son and pick up a bunch of apples because free apples, great. But when you have that many apples, you definitely need one of those apple peeler slicers because you do not want to do that by hand. And so I was looking for one, and on the Johnny Victorio site, they had a bunch of like aluminum ones that were being sold on their cast iron listing. So they were obviously hijackers. And so the customer service people actually went in there and responded on every single one of those and said, here's what it should look like. Here's what you should expect. If you get something that isn't that, then you need to return it for a full refund and report the seller. And here is what it should look like from the actual Johnny Victorio product. And we're so sorry this is happening. We're working with Amazon on it, but here's the seller name for when you want to buy it directly from us. And so when you respond on a review like that, then you can basically say, here's what's happening, here's what's going on to anyone else who looks. So if someone is like, oh, this looks really great. Oh, there's all these 1-star reviews, what's going on? And if you go look at the 1-star reviews, you can see the comments, you look at the comments, oh, there are counterfeits. That's the only way that you can really kind of get ahead of that, because Amazon won't take it down, ever. That's just not what they do. Wouldn't that be, oh, Tandy says the binder full, yeah, that was, that was quite a moment. Mike says, wouldn't that be an act clearly allowing defamation at a seller's expense? Could you explain more about what you mean about who's allowing the defamation? Do you mean like the selling, like hijacking the listing and then allowing there to be a negative review and that's causing defamation? Is that what you mean? Lee says, you're so lucky to have Washington State apples for free. Yes. and they're organic because they just grow. Actually, that's kind of one of the funny things about it is when you actually have like organically grown apples because no one's spraying anything and it's in somebody's front yard, you get a lot more worms. You get a lot more bugs because the bugs and worms didn't get killed. So they're happily living in the apples. So it does require a little bit more washing before making the applesauce. So Amazon doesn't see it as allowing fake reviews. Now, maybe there's like a class action lawsuit about it, then you could do something about it, but that's not how they see it. They see it as protecting the ability of the marketplace to be independent. And if they start policing one thing, then they might have to police other things. And the policy is just they don't do it. They used to have this policy about what they allowed on the site. Back in 2010, I worked on an escalation. There was a complaint about this book, and the book was The Pedophile's Guide to Man-Boy Love, or something horrible, like an absolutely god-awful title. And someone complained about it, and they're like, why is this on Amazon? This is not a cool thing to publish. Like, what the heck is this? And I actually brought it to my legal department. So at the time, my job was to review product safety issues. And that particular review got flagged because of They mentioned injury to children, obviously. And I brought this to my legal department and I was like, hey, this is a big problem. You guys need to know that this is going to happen. If someone gets a hold of this in the media, this is going to be huge. You should know that this is a problem and someone is selling this product on Amazon. And the legal team said, okay, we're working on it. A couple days later, came back to me and said, we're not going to take it down because of free speech. So they were really adamant that they don't police the platform. They do not take things down just because they're offensive. They allow the marketplace to run itself. And not even a week later, the book went viral. And there was postings about it on Facebook I saw, and I was like, well, didn't that happen? Just like I said it would. And at that point, then Amazon started getting pressure from news media outlets. It started being on the evening news, like it became a huge deal. And then they finally took it down because of the pressure. So if you can get more news outlets to pick up this fake review thing, if you can get a couple more of them to talk about it, then you might make more headway than complaining to seller support. But they did not change their policy, even around pedophilia books, until they were forced to by public opinion. Fake reviews do not rise to the same level of severity. It was terrible. The book was basically, they said that it wasn't bad because the guy said that it was for pedophiles who didn't want to hurt children. And I was just like, what? Yeah. So that was a thing. The legal department actually came back to me and said they weren't going to censor even that. So generally speaking, Amazon likes to set a policy and stick with it no matter what crazy thing comes up. Okay, next question. Do you think that PPC bid is a key factor if I decide to launch a certain product? I've seen the keyword scout that PPC bid is quite high for the main product keywords. I don't know if that could be a problem once I try to sell the product. No, don't worry about that. What you should think about when you're doing PPC bids is how difficult it is to advertise for a product is not how high the top bid is, it's how broad the number of keywords are that you can bid on. So my favorite example of this is compression socks. Compression sock is a very specific term for a very specific product. And there's really only one other word for that, which is compression stockings. And sometimes those don't mean the same thing as compression socks. So you really don't have a very broad broad variety of keywords to choose from to sell that product. You really have to bid on the top keyword to sell your product. So if you have a product that's more broad, where there's lots of different keyword phrases to get to the same thing, or different words that mean the same thing, or different spellings that people have because maybe it's a hard word to spell, then you've got a much better chance to compete because you'll be able to corner the lower end keywords. If it's a product that really there's only one way to market it, then you've got a problem, not necessarily the competition, if that makes sense. Yeah. Mike says, I'm just a typical seller. I will bite the bullet of fake reviews. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of reporters that kind of do the Amazon beat in Bloomberg and the New York Times. There was a new one that just came out on The Verge that I was interviewed for, and he seems to be doing some Amazon stuff lately. But yeah, it's just without some sort of public pressure, it just makes it almost impossible for Amazon to do anything because they don't have to. I mean, they're not required to. It's their platform. That's the joy of capitalism, right? They get to do what they want. And they're so big that it impacts all of us. Is there a way to pull an Amazon report from 2018 with all the items you had sent back to you? I want it to include customer returned and then things I recalled myself. I found something under reports, fulfillment, and removal order detail, but it seems to only be customer returns and not any items I returned myself. You should be able to see that under your removals reports in fulfillment, and so reports and then fulfillment, and on the left-hand side on your inventory reports. So go check that. So it would be under the sales reports and the inventory reports, but it should definitely be there. And if it's not, sometimes you can just contact seller support and ask them for the reports because they have access to reports that aren't in the standard seller support. So in the standard seller central list of reports. So for example, we ask for category listing reports all the time because that's not in the standard report list. And so we have to ask seller support for it, and then we can get the category listing report, and then it disappears after a week. So if you really need something like that and you can't find it in the existing reports, then you can just contact seller support and say, hey, I need this. Can you get me that report? And often they can do that for you. Last question that I had on the pre-done list. So if you have a question, get this in right now, because after this, then we're through our list of questions that we had come in this week. Do I really need a UPC code? The product I'm sending to FBA does not have a UPC on the retail packaging. I bought 100 units of the same color. The product was sourced from China, and all of the 100 units are exactly the same. The exact product is already sold on Amazon. Can I just use that ASIN and sell yours, then create my FN SKUs through Seller Central? Or must I purchase a UPC for my product regardless? Okay, so this is problematic because what it sounds like is that the item was sourced from China and then someone else has a listing and you want to list on it. And if you do that, then you could be the hijacker that everyone else is complaining about. So I wouldn't do that. You do need a UPC code to list a new listing on Amazon. That's required to upload, but they don't generally validate it unless it's from a big brand. If it's from a big brand that they work with directly, then they will validate against the GS1 prefix. So like Disney or Mattel, something like that. Excuse me. Speaking of Disney, grumpy. If it's something that's like that, then they will validate against GS1. If it's not that brand, like if it's just, Joe Schmo's bag of cool things, then they're not going to validate the UPC, and you can use something from like Speedy Barcodes or one of the other tools. And that's it for our pre-done list. Lee asks, where do I send a question if we want to get them on a list of questions prior to the call? In our Facebook group. So we have it for the former Amazonians Guide to the Zon. Christina goes through those and she reviews them. I generally will go in there once or twice a week and answer them. But if I haven't been able to get to that for whatever reason, because I'm prepping for something or because it's a crazy week, Christina makes sure that I get all those before this session so that everyone's questions always get answered. That's our main goal. Speaking of why I haven't been in the group this week, we have a challenge next week, and I'm really excited about it. We're doing a content challenge. And I remember one of my very first events in this space where I was speaking right after a really well-known speaker in this space, and she was talking about how she does content, and she's talking about like feature benefit and talking to your friends, and it was very much like a content writer's approach. And I kept being like, but I'm not a content writer. I would absolutely suck at that. I must be a really terrible writer of detail pages. Like I just can't even follow how she's doing this, and ended up coming up with a whole different way of doing content. It's all based around data and numbers. And any of you who have been on any of my challenges or anything else that I've done from a webinar perspective, I'm all about data and numbers. I like to know what I'm doing. I don't like to guess or hope. I like to be like, no, this is what's important and this is what I care about. And so we have a very data-driven approach to doing content, and I'm really excited to share that with you guys. And so we'll be going over that next week, where we're going to talk about how to actually organize what customers say into a really data-driven approach to know exactly what you should put in your first bullet, exactly what you should put in your second bullet, exactly how you should format your enhanced brand content, what you should be doing for your storefront, really data-driven stuff, because that is where it's at when you actually are trying to convert and rank, is all about the data and the numbers, not about how people feel or how well you write. Like even some of the best writers I know don't have great pages because it reads really well, but it's not the keywords that convert and it's not the questions that customers have. So I'm super excited to have that. It is next week, all week, so Monday through Friday. And it's the same kind of challenge that we did on advertising, where each day you have one particular topic and you have one particular task. And so it's all broken out for the whole week to where you just have one thing that you're working on for that day. We go through it, you do it, and then the next day we do the next step. And so the whole week, by the end of the week, you'll have all the steps you need to redo your content for a page. So our goal is to help everyone approach their Amazon listings with a really structured, organized approach, because that's what works for me. And I've seen so many presentations on this content where it absolutely did not work for me, where I just got confused because I was like, but there's so many words and they're all too fluffy. So for me, I always like to have things structured. I like to know, 10 this or 8 that or this percentage this. And so that's what I'll be going through. So if that sounds useful to you guys, if it makes you feel like you would feel more confident about what you're doing, and if you've ever thought, wow, I'm not like that great of a writer, am I even doing a very good job on this? Then this challenge is for you, because that's totally where I came from. I'm looking forward to that. And would love to see you all next week. And anyone who is on the West Coast like me, who does not want to wake up at 6 in the morning, sorry, then there are definitely replays. And we have something special that we're offering just for those who sign up. So I hope to see you there. All right, that's it for today. Went a little bit long, but we had so many questions this morning. We always want to make sure that we answer all your questions. So looking forward to seeing you hopefully in the challenge next week. And otherwise, see you next Wednesday.